Hello, it's Jen Bengal here from Out of This World Literacy. Today I want to talk a bit about some ways you can celebrate poetry in your classroom without a lot of stress. I'm going to give you two really practical ideas to help you introduce and celebrate poetry that are so quick and effective you could start getting this set up today. How cool is that? Many teachers focus on teaching poetry in April because it's actually National Poetry Month. National Poetry Month was inaugurated by the Academy of American Poets in 1996, not too long ago. Since the inauguration, publishers, schools, libraries, bookstores, and poets around the world celebrate the richness that poetry adds to every culture. You can celebrate with your students too. There are many ways you can celebrate poetry with your students. Some teachers choose to spend an entire month on a poetry unit, while others might take a week or two to explore the genre. Some may spend just a few days. Regardless of how long you spend on poetry in your classroom this year, think about doing these two things to get ready. The first must-do activity is to begin gathering a collection of poetry books for your class to read and enjoy. During your poetry unit, you want to have readily available at least one poetry book per student. So if you have 30 students, you'll want 30 books. Some of them can be the same book, just multiple copies. This is so very important because each day after your poetry whole group lesson, you'll want to give students time to enjoy reading, thinking, and writing about poetry. They each need their own poetry book to read for this independent time. This may seem kind of overwhelming, but it's really not. Here's some ideas that you can use to gather poetry books. You can check out as many poetry books from your school library as you possibly can find. Ask students, parents, or friends to bring in poetry books that they have at home for you to borrow for your time that you need them. Visit your local public library and check out books. You can return them in just a few weeks. And since the kids won't be bringing these poetry books home, you don't have to worry about losing them. Find poetry collections online and print them off and staple them together to make more poetry available for your students. Or partner up with a teaching buddy. Teach poetry at different times of the day so that you can share the books that you've collected together. Do whatever you can to gather enough books for your class. The more, the better, but you really need one per student. In the next episode, I'm going to share with you some of my all-time favorite poetry books. The second must-do activity is to have students create their own poetry journals so they can copy their favorite poems, write about poems, and try out their own poetry style. The journals are super simple to make. You'll need 20 pieces of white cardstock for each student. The cover can be another white piece or a colored copy for each student to decorate. I use cardstock because it makes the poems feel more official and published. Also, if kids use markers to illustrate, it never bleeds through to the other side. Bind the pages with a binding machine or simply staple them 3 times together. I recommend numbering the pages in the journals and skipping the first few pages. After the journals are filled up, we go back and we actually create a table of contents on those first few pages. Inside the journals, we do many things during our poetry unit, from copying and collecting poems that we love, to writing about poems, to listing traits of poetry, to writing our very own poems. I hope these two must-do activities are helpful for you in getting your class ready to celebrate poetry. It's been my pleasure chatting with you today. Know that I am the biggest fan of the work that you and your students are doing in the classroom. If you'd like to hear more about poetry and learn my secret recipe for getting every student in class writing poetry in just 4 days, I'd love for you to join me in a free live training that's happening actually this Saturday, April 7th, or on April 18th. I'm really excited to share this information in the free training. You can register for free by visiting jenbengalwebinars.com. Just remember my name has all E's when you type it in. There are some other live trainings happening this month as well for you to check out at jenbengalwebinars.com. Until next time, you've got this.